Well, we are now on to session 2 in room 4. Welcome, everyone. Our session in this hour is Co-Housing in Perspective with Rains Cohen, Eli Bradley, and Anne Gare McMichael, who are members of the Rocky Corner Co-Housing community. And Rocky Corner Co-Housing, for those who aren't aware, has been going through quite a nightmarish situation as they were approaching move-in, and all sorts of challenges that have been beyond anybody's control. And as a bonus, they have been profiled in the New York Times Sunday real estate section with an article that omitted a lot of details, had a lot of comments from many people, and set a wide number of wrong impressions. So this is an opportunity to for a couple of members of the community to help set the record straight. We have Eli Bradley and Anne Gare McMichael. And Eli is a multi-instrumentalist musician and artisan. They are also a recreational therapist and technology geek during the week, and many other things. And I will add a little bit more detail in chat for those who are interested in following up. And Anne, would you like to say something about yourself?
I'm a member of Rocky Corners community, and I teach water aerobics. And I used to teach chemistry and mathematics to high school students and was a camp administrator. So living in community has always been important to me.
Wonderful, thank you, Anne. I'll hand things over to Rains, who's going to be coordinating this session, and look forward to hearing what all of you have to say.
Thank you, Scott, and thank you to all of you for coming, and for the community members willing to turn up on very short notice. This really came together in the last 24 hours, or maybe 48 hours ago. We had the idea when there turned out to be a spot in the program. Because yeah, I've been a longtime fan of this community, following it. I've had family in the Boston area, and so recent to be passing through and visiting the site and going to open houses, and they've gotten some publicity along the way. But this story was a little different. This was a New York Times story that was in last Sunday's real estate section, somewhere saying front page in the print edition, and it was online for several days before that, and accumulated an incredible number, nearly 1,000 by their count, of comments, and yeah, and I started engaging in the comments myself, and I saw people from the group engaging, and I say, oh wow, this is really fascinating. First, the framing of the story itself and how the author put it, but and lovely pictures, although people without context don't know how to necessarily read a picture of development that was interrupted, not knowing all the features that are there that they're going to be there that aren't there yet. But yeah, it's sort of it's telling a partial picture, and both in the framing of the story and in the way people commented on it. It's amazing the amount of projection that people have, ascribing of their own view of the world, of government and its role, assumptions. Oh, they must be corrupt. The group must be stealing things. Oh, that's ineffective. Oh, sociocracy, whatever. And I just wanted to see how did that land for people in the group, and what were some reactions, and what did people feel like had to be done about it? Was it a group campaign to get involved or respond, or?
So I don't think we have really, as a community, formed a group response to this. There's a few of us that put a couple of comments in the latest newsletter, but it's pretty big, you know, and when you have 1,000 some odd comments, that it makes it a bit overwhelming, you know, to address each one of these little pieces of things of what, you know, somebody might think about things. But I think, yes, there's a lot of misconceptions in the article. Probably one of the biggest ones was, you know, saying that we didn't have professionals. We've had professionals in all kinds of categories forever. We've worked with all kinds of different organizations. We've worked with the state. We've worked with our Connecticut Department of Housing, the health department. We've worked with the town and zoning. We have worked with engineers and architects and builders. So it's been a long process. And I think that one of the things that we've kind of learned along the way is that if you're trying to build co-housing in a state that has a number of very strict bureaucratic types of hoops that you have to jump through, it's going to take a long time. There's going to be a lot of problems. And there's every obstacle that came our way was nothing that we would say to ourselves like, yeah, okay, well, let's quit. Not a single one. We've gone through many, many hurdles. And in some ways, this is just another hurdle for us. We still have a community. We still are a strong group of people that are committed to co-housing. And we'll figure out what that means, you know, and hopefully it'll be Rocky Corner. Hopefully it'll be a developer that we can work with, and that we will go ahead with, you know, the families that have stayed committed to it. We hope to bring along, you know, those that did lose everything. We hope to bring those people along. So we're making a group offer. We're not trying to do things individually to buy this stuff. This is our posse. This is our family. These are the people that we love, that we've come to work with. And yeah, we're going to be bringing them along. Check.
Cool. Yeah, from the get-go, I mean, people, of course, who have been involved in co-housing development know that it's always new surprises. You can prepare for whatever, but it's what you haven't prepared for that gets you. And we don't have to go into the history here today, but I do know that, you know, there's changing regulations, and people were saying in the piece, oh, your group was naive, it didn't know about like water regulations, for example. But there would sound like the rules are changing as the game is being played. It's not like you could rely on what was there when you started.
Well, there's that piece of it, and there's very strict rules, you know, that they have in place. And for example, when we talk about the water, we had intended, as all of Bethany, Connecticut, to use wells. We dug wells. We have great water, and we worked with the state to make sure that everything was in order. And ultimately, they said that we had to work with the Regional Water Authority. We took time, maybe about a year within that type of group, to say, okay, well, this is potable water, this is a well system, this is community house, you know, co-housing. We don't want it chlorinated. We don't want this processed in any way. This is great water. Plus, it's an organic farm. You know, you don't want to put chlorine in if you've got an organic farm. So there were things like that. It took a long time. And ultimately the state came back and they said, nope, this is your only choice. You know, you have to go this direction. So we were aware of things. We tried to work with the system. We tried to make some changes that would have made more sense for our group. And ultimately we were put in this position where we have to do X, Y, Z.
And go ahead, yeah.
I think it's also that all along the way, the state was like, oh, we'll listen to your concerns. We'll take them into consideration. You know, they kept saying they would work with us. And then in the end, it was, no, it's exactly this way. And you don't, you know, we've just been being nice or whatever. It wasn't so much a change in actual regulation, well, a little bit, but it was mostly a change in their attitude, that at some point they just said, no, you know, we thought you would change your minds, but because we never were going to. So that was where we were with the water, I think. You know, but it was set up. We have appropriate wells. They all run clear. They're all fine. It's just they need to be treated for so many people.
Right. It was all about the number of people that we had. So if we only had 25, we could have just done well system. But because we had 30 homes, now it has to be treated differently because they didn't understand it. This not having co-housing existing in the state where you are, being the first co-housing in Connecticut was a real challenge, I think, for a lot of our bureaucracy.
We've seen a lot of that. The first place any community is happening in a city or a state, be it is this fish or fowl, and they try to fit it into the system one way or another, and that has consequences.
Right.
I mean, I'm similarly.
And so
I was,
they erred on the side of being much more strict because of it, because they weren't sure what this is going to be. So let's put as much regulation on as we possibly can, and really make it a challenge.
so yeah, I mean, and I can see we've seen this be also from public health agencies and cities and fire departments in general. Assume the worst, and that's their job to prevent the disaster and head that off. But there's no process by which a community can show that you're operating at a higher standard, at a higher level of care for each other, and would intercept, would hit a problem before it became a problem.
Right. And even within that town, if you look to like a trailer park that was there, they didn't have to follow the same rules, but because this is co-housing, because it's something that's different, more stringent measures, I think, were applied to our group. So
And
call
that
it something
happens. And
else.
then-
If you're starting a community, call it something else.
We've certainly seen this for approvals, and there's of course more awareness and transparency, and you can't hide with the internet. But I know early communities, the advice was, here we are, Berkeley Co-housing, we're Strawberry Commons Homeowners Association. Co-housing, it's just a bonus. It's just a social layer, but don't confuse the banks or the cities with the terminology. But it's hard because now we need to market it. We need to help people see the value in it. So it's not like we can just hide out in the woods and do our thing.
Absolutely. I was obviously teasing in a little bit, just because there's a level of frustration, sure, that not being understood what this is, not having the ability to really make it clear to state groups, to town groups. You're always explaining what co-housing is. So yeah, more advertising about what co-housing is, I think, is definitely needed, in our country.
Education, and that's the kind of things the National Association and Open House Day are trying to do. One more thing, and this relates to the state. I was excited, members of the group spoke at many conferences about its innovations in affordability, getting a state grant and creating space, creating more room for affordability. But that turned out to be challenging as well. And that was some people commenting like as though that were lost, and you might want to say something about how that's not lost.
So as I understand it, and you might have some different perspectives on this, they still need to follow those regulations. So when we received the grant money for this, the state, a Department of Housing gave us, I think it was 2.6 million to help create our affordable component, which we really wanted very, very much, and we still want. We want to be able to accept and live next to a very wide group of people, as far as their income base and diversity and everything else. They still have to follow those rules. The Department of Housing is not going to back away from that. They'll still have to, whoever buys it will still have to follow through that. That's what it's zoned for within the town. They can't add anything else. They can't turn it into the original set of condos that they had wanted to before and put in 60 condos and spread out over the entire land. They still have to keep it 30 with 60 bedrooms. Septic has to still remain the same, and the housing has to remain there.
So, and you've designed and largely built a co-housing community that with the common house and the features. So it seems
Sure.
like it would be silly for it to end up as anything else. Somebody would be wasting more in that process. Or losing
Yeah,
value.
I think it would be difficult to sell it as anything else. You know, when you look at the proximities of the houses, we had triplexes and duplexes in little quadrants. We really clustered them close together so that we could utilize all of the land as that we possibly could. There's, you know, the parking's on the ring road, all the co-housing bits, right? You know, you got a pathway, pedestrian pathway going through the middle. It's really, really designed as co-housing, not as something else. So they'd have a hard time selling it as condos.
Yeah, and some of the comments were about people with experience with condos and the at each other nature of condo boards and not believing either not understanding why co-housing is anything different from condos or not believing that it could ever work. And obviously the group's been doing lots of work together for a long time, and it was fascinating to see people's reactions to the sociocracy as a system and the ground rules and feeling like that was, oh, that must have done it in. It can never be efficient enough. And I don't know if you wanted to say anything about the actual experience and, you know, just how these things actually work, or just
Yeah,
reactions.
well, within our community, we had adopted sociocracy. It took, I think, a few years for the group to come together to understand what kind of system they wanted to work with. I wasn't part of that. But when I came into Rocky Corner, I can tell you that it's just like, what is sociocracy? Let me find out. And as I kind of went down my little rabbit holes to learn about it, that was the first group that I wanted to join. And I wanted to join it so that I could understand, you know, how are we communicating with each other? What is a way to have a meeting go efficiently? How can we make decisions? And this has been and continues to be something that really works for our community.
I think it's important that we remember that
Please.
we still are a community, even though the houses, the property was foreclosed on, and we still have a vision of being able to purchase those houses from whoever ends up owning them. Because, I mean, nobody can buy it all, tear it all down and build a mansion kind of thing. That's just not in the cards.
And yeah, the time story very much has this framing. Okay, some of the founders invested, lost everything, and as though that were the end. And then obviously this is still evolving story, and the work going on. I was excited to see the community newsletter come out this week, working with the energy that was out there, and engagement in correcting some of the posts and setting some of the records straight. And I thought that was very, very bold. The community, but it's got to be hard. I mean, I think people in the threads even had some sympathy for community members who stepped up given some of the attacks and assumptions there. And would either of you part of that, or want to share on any of those?
I wasn't directly involved with that. Were you, Ann?
No, I wasn't. I know some of the people who posted, but I personally was too defensive to the comments to then take part in them.
We had other
Yeah,
co-housers
I got to the
even saying,
first
"No,
day of like 30. I got to the first section about 30 comments, and I was just like, okay, I'm done. Let's get back to work. Let's get back to what we need to do in our community.
Yes, sorry. That's great to see that moving forward. And yeah, I mean, I just remember I was there just as COVID was hitting, and seeing the state of the site, and the plan was planning for the open house was going to be a special event. It was a hard time for everybody, but yeah, other groups run into challenges along the way. Our very own community in Berkeley before my time had a what would have been a lawsuit with the builder that went to arbitration, and the group put in actual damages, the builder put in inflated damages, the arbitrator split it down the middle. So after the group did all its own paralegal work for a year, it had to come up with significant amounts of money. And after people had their home finance, so that was challenging, but they found a way through. And mostly it's, left, it's a very thriving, successful communities now for 28 years, but we still feel the shadows of that, the echoes in our caution about money and decisions, and lessons learned the hard way. And we certainly take more time, but work on that. Any other thoughts before one of you has to leave? So I wanted, Steve, if you wanted to get any last thoughts.
Next.
For those of us who are building communities kind of a little behind yours, what in hindsight would you have done differently in order to avoid some of what you experienced?
It's kind of like the bunch of blind guys going up to the elephant and touching one little piece of this. There's a lot of different perspectives. You touch the tusk and you think you're touching a spear. You touch the side and you think you're touching a wall. So there's this whole parable about the blind man and the elephant. So I think that there's so many different aspects to this. We've been at this since 2006. And there have been different people that have come in at different points in the process. I've been in it for about 4 years, and I couldn't pinpoint like one thing that I would say, hey, let's do this differently, other than to realize that within a state, look at those zonings, look at, what those regulations are, look to see if there's any other co-housing that's in the state if you're starting from scratch. If people don't have an understanding of co-housing, it's going to be more difficult. So I would say that that's one of the bigger pieces to do. Anne, is there something else you want to tuck in with?
I guess I would say that if it's possible to find a developer, even we avoided that because they would want to take a profit, but they also take the financial risk. So I probably would go that way if I had to do it all over, but that's just me. I'm not speaking for the group because we haven't debriefed at all as a group. As a matter of fact, we're still sort of going forward.
Thank you, Anne. And that's the moving forward is the piece. I know that for many places, the first time a developer is hard because it's hard to make the numbers work, and with their share they take, and then there's still a few developers. I've got Betsy here with a question. Let me flip around.
Oh my goodness. Hi, I lost my connection, my independent connection. Thank you. I want to say, like Rains, I've had a lot of respect and interest, and been to the Connecticut area in Bethany and met some of the early burning souls, and just paying homage and sympathies, condolences, but it's so great to hear you're still together. My question is this: is there any value or possibility of essentially suing the state for changing the rules in the middle of the game? And I don't mean that as a yes and no question. Maybe you can't even address it, but I do want to speak to the possibility of this as a seminal lawsuit. Or is there a way that others of us in co-housing could support or lobby or raise up this issue and I'm sure there's many developers as well who've experienced this, but how's there a way forward through the legal system or the legislative system? And can we support you financially?
I
some
think that that's a wonderful topic to bring up. I cannot address that because of time and because of, my position is just part of the community. I think we would love to have that kind of brainstorming session with folks to see if there's some legal aspect that we could pursue. But we're not talking about that within our community. But I think that's a great comment, and I appreciate that. And I would love to have us pursue something like that. Let's have a brainstorming session on it. Thank you. I do need to cut out, and so I will thank you for your time and for this forum, and good luck with all of your co-housing projects, everyone. Take care.
Thank you, Eli. Thanks for being a part of it.
Bye-bye now.
We still have Ann, and we can get some general questions. I see Dean from Sunnyside.
Yeah, I can relate a personal experience from several years ago of going through a very similar bankruptcy by a builder. And what happened in that case was the builder went bankrupt because, and it was the construction loan bank, you see, that foreclosed on the builder because of the bankruptcy and because of all the mechanics liens, such as from plumbers and electricians and what have you, that filed liens against the property. You need a lawyer, and because you have a lien against that property too. And when in our case, our lawyer couldn't tell if the mechanics liens came before us or after us in the stuff of who gets first bids on things. So he waited until a day before the auction. The property was going to be auctioned by the bank that foreclosed, and he filed our claim, and the bank was surprised. They didn't know what to do with it, so they had to buy the property themselves at the auction and bid enough money to cover the mechanics liens and our lien. So we got covered. And then another developer came along, picked up the process. We gave our money that we recovered to him because now he's the developer, and we finished it, and it was all okay. But you need a lawyer to help you see what your options are at this point.
Thank you, Dean. And I believe they are represented. But yeah, there's always different specialties, and it's a reminder that yes, we've gotten Cohousing to succeed by working with the system of standard condo finance and development and so on, and that can include sometimes working with the systems of bankruptcy and property and so on, and finding ways to get the outcomes we want. And just a reminder that yes, the money has not been lost, as some of the times commenters were spent. It's been spent, and more needs to be spent to get it to technical completion. But I saw that some of the units, other than the last steps of the water supply and some surface things, were occupiable even as of 2 years ago.
Right.
Our house
is done except for water. I mean, the temptation to build a latrine and move in was extremely high. But through the foreclosure, yes, your description was almost exactly what went on for us, except we were our own developers is part of the problem, or whether it was the problem or not. But in terms of who to get the money from kind of thing, we were our own developers. The major construction company charged heavy carrying costs over 2 winters when they did nothing. The bank and the state had primary whatever in the foreclosure, and the bank did buy, I mean, they surprised everybody. They bought the property at auction for substantially more than the appraised value of the property, which it was more than the appraised value plus all the liens. So,
So that, which is interesting, which perhaps that's the, I mean, there's reasons why banks have, you know, the insurance and sometimes the way you move things from one side of the ledger to another.
right.
But yeah, if they're aiming to sell at market, then the value is there. Other thoughts about this, other people, how do you feel like people's own reactions to the article and concerns, the framing of the conversation? Some other people in the thread share their own co-housing stories, and including, you know, some people in Eugene, Oregon that said, oh, they gave up, everyone's pulled out, but he's describing a project that's now got financing and is under construction and be ready for moving within a year. Of, you know, so people don't necessarily keep up with their impressions of where things were.
I'll jump in and just say that I thought it was really helpful, having read your the article that you posted on in your newsletter on the website. That was really clear and highlighted a number of the concerns with the article, and I applaud you for putting that out there publicly as a response. And I know it's not you as in Anne, I'm talking about you as in the broader Rocky Corner community. So thank you for that.
That's our outreach circle still working.
We ended up ultimately co-opting most of the neighborhood and outlasting the neighbors in the legal process. So in Cambridge, Mass, development is also very complicated. I didn't realize that Connecticut was possibly even worse. We didn't go 16 years, but we did manage to move in after 9. So yes, it is possible from the lowest and most hopeless looking points to succeed. Hope that helps.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. And I've visited that community as well, and really like what became of it. And yeah, it's always the challenges that are out there. Did anybody feel like, you know, they read the article, or they've, you know, come from the article fearing that this is going to convince finance people that, oh, co-housing isn't safe or solid, or isn't as grounded, or can't succeed? I mean, I saw some rebuttals of that, but I'm just curious that.
Okay, there was some talk at the Portland conference a couple of years ago about advocating for the idea that there should be a federal program of loan guarantees for construction loans. You know, if the banks knew that they had a guaranteed loan, a guarantor on the loan, I think they'd be a little less likely to foreclose in marginal situations. What do people think of that? Having a federal guarantee program for construction loans? I suppose it would have to be done through the what do they call it? HUD, Housing and Urban Development Organization. When it was suggested at Portland, there were several people in the room from Tacoma Co-housing in Washington, D.C. who work at HUD. And they said, oh yes, we could do that. And here's the way to do it. And they had a whole program lined out, at least in their words, about how that could be done. And I was just wondering how people would feel about such a thing.
Good question.
Well, it would still be a matter of qualifying for that guarantee. You know, I mean, we did qualify for the state grant, so, and we probably would have qualified for that kind of guarantee, but who knows? And it's regulational steps to jump through, no matter what. I mean, if it helps, that would be great.
Somebody would need to establish the qualifications for getting such a loan. And often the federal government will look to some organization like the co-housing organization to suggest what the qualification process should be. And then they modify that and so forth. And so we could have an active role in establishing such a program.
Yeah. I mean, through HUD, and I know many communities qualified for Federal Housing Authority FHA financing, and there's a certification process for condos, which then got stricter after 2008. And as they were rewriting the rules, co-housing was in a pile of stuff to sort out later that they didn't understand. You know, it was sort of, oh, if we have to do a foreclosure, well, we have to come cook the common meals. They're looking for a commodity product that they could create insurance around. And with my neighbor Alice, we led to policy change to just within that room for interpretation, and then maybe more opportunity to just make sure that co-housing isn't getting excluded, but at the same time, anything that makes it easier for other people may mean more competition, or we're paying higher prices to get the same resource. But definitely, let's follow up on 2019. And this is, we do have a new executive director for the Co-housing Association who has these areas of priority of increasing affordability and accessibility and diversity of co-housing. And I think we've got some fresh ideas and approaches that the world may be ripe for. The thing that caught me about the Times article and the whole situation is that basically the world now sees, and maybe it's been reinforced before, attention on previous articles, that people care about this. They may have a lot of opinions. Some of them may be misinformed or projection of their personal world, but there's a passion. There's a world of people out there beyond our community, local members and seekers, that want co-housing to succeed, that want it to be an option. And so it's up to us to then create opportunities for them to support and step up and make it easier and be part of a larger movement. And it seems co-housing is part of a community's movement. We have to look for a way for people to be part of a co-housing movement, even if it's nothing that they can afford or find a place in community. Anybody else? I'm just curious, anybody else with the similar experience that they've overcome in the path of their community, and then they made it through, or that they're thinking about or facing now in the earlier stages of development?
Yeah, I think we definitely should put in a plug for what Katie's doing with development. Having a co-housing experienced developer right from the start, but help through that early phase of the project while you're really doing feasibility, being able to evaluate the kind of risks, because all these things are things that happen to housing projects in general, and some of them are unique to co-housing, which just adds a few more challenges. And I think that it's, you know, the whole idea of not bringing a developer in until you maybe need them at the end to sign on the loan or something like that, I think is crazy. You need that development expertise, and there's not a lot of it that specializes in co-housing out there, but there are a few. I know I help some groups when they're really just getting started and trying to decide what to do so that they can stay out of trouble, because you're trying to manage your risk all the way through the process. And nobody likes to get a whole lot of money invested, and then all of a sudden you discover things that throw the project out in left field. Most communities, at least my experience has been that if the community is strong enough, they figure out how to eventually get it done. The price of their houses might be a lot higher than what they ever anticipated, but it's possible. So I think in the case of the Rocky community, that hopefully a local developer will pick it up. And I would encourage them to work with a co-housing experienced developer consultant of some type to help them manage that part of it, because there's a real art to that. Otherwise, the community members themselves, if they're they really have to be able to understand the difference between a developer's role and a community member's role. And it's very challenging for self-developed communities that, you know, that it's kind of a myth that developers, you know, that are you're gonna pay a lot more if you have a developer. I mean, a development consultant like Katie, I mean, that might add 1 or 2% to the whole price of your
Wait,
house.
Wait,
You know,
we
and you got
did
somebody,
have a consultant. We did have a housing consultant
well,
who
what,
worked with us all along the way.
A co-housing consultant, yes.
It wasn't,
Yeah.
he.
you have one from the
he
start?
From the, not from the, but before we bought the land, he got us through all the zoning stuff. He hooked us up with the proper attorneys. He invested in it. He's actually, they talk about him in the article.
So he played the role of your development. Yeah.
So
Jim, I mean, you have done the most US housing development of any one person, perhaps. And Washington Village, you had really deep challenges of the town almost about to vote to prevent what you were doing. I mean, but you found a way back.
Yeah, some of them take forever. Washington Village took, I don't know, about total of 10 years probably front to back, because it ran into so much neighborhood resistance and other problems and a major recession in the middle of it. In some cases you just get caught, but Katie and I were doing Fresno co-housing when the 2009 recession hit. It wiped out 50% of the value of all the houses in Fresno, including our new co-housing units. It costs a lot more than that to build. And consequently, we lost a lot of the sales that couldn't close. People couldn't close because they couldn't sell their house. And
The bank wouldn't let you rent them even in the meantime.
well, what we did,
Yeah.
and is we did a workout with the bank, and it took us about 4 or 5 years to really get it all worked out, get all the units sold. Meanwhile, you know, we were renting units, we were doing whatever, but we had an agreement. And part of the reason we hung in there with it is that, you know, I was signed on the loan. Yeah, Katie was too. And you know, that you need to share risk among all of the participants, including the members. And that's a strong community today. It's thriving in Fresno. I'm not sure what their houses are worth. Hopefully they're worth as much as they, I know they're worth a lot more than what some of them paid for them.
And did you have, thank you, Jim. And did you have any, you know, final thoughts or just feelings for the future or for what this state of things, or you know?
I think we're waiting for the bank's next step so that we know whether they're going to develop or whether they're going to sell to a developer. They have told people that they're still trying to decide. And we're hoping to work with whomever is going to finish the project. And we are still hopeful to be a community living together. We are a community living apart at this point.
Excellent. And I think that that's the important thing, you know, as much as the story may, you know, focus on a few people on a snapshot, it's about relationships and things that come over time, including relationship to the place and to each other. And I remember coming to a potluck at somebody's house when after an orientation, what would have been 2.5 years ago.
Eli's
And
house.
yep. Yeah, and just the lovely feeling of caring that was there, and delighted to feel it's there. I may have been one of the people referenced in the piece where it said some people were talking about putting their retirement into this. I've invested in a couple of communities with my meager self-directed IRA and pooling in with other people to help out in development, provide loan guarantees, whatever. And it's something that I feel like we have a lot of capacity, more than we realize, to collectively spread the risks, spread the costs, and make it easier to get through some of these hurdles and hoops if they come up. So I'm looking forward to say the group, don't hesitate to ask. There's a movement here that wants to see the project succeed, and it may be that there's access to more reasonable funding through investment crowdfunding or whatever community means than the market may provide that might help fill a gap. Something like that. And with that, I'll say we really appreciate you both of your time coming here today, and the group for setting the record straight. And your website is up, rockycorner.org, that people can subscribe to your newsletter and stay tuned and even be part of the next chapter. And there could well be some lovely co-housing homes that you end up getting into for more folks getting involved in without having all the history personally, and just be able to be among the heroes that helped make it happen. So thank you all for being here.